Family said it was a simple mistake until the guest list got leaked and everything fell apart. Hey there. Growing up, I had a brother who felt more like a best friend than anything else. Nathan and I were inseparable for years. We had the kind of bond that people pointed out. Our parents said we came as a package. From pillow forts in the living room to whispered jokes at the dinner table, our world felt like a shared secret. We watched the same movies until we memorized every line, created games that made no sense to anyone but us, and made promises with the kind of seriousness only kids believe in. In every childhood photo, you'd probably see us shoulder to shoulder, grinning like nothing could ever pull us apart. He was always the magnetic one. Nathan drew people in without even trying. He had this effortless confidence. Loud, charismatic, always at the center of the room. I was quieter, more observant. But I didn't mind. In some ways, I liked being the one beside him. I liked being the anchor to his energy. It felt like we balanced each other out. When he was stormy, I was calm. When he got loud, I held the silence that kept us steady. Life did what life does, it moved us forward. Different schools, new friends, growing interests. But even as the details of our lives evolved, the foundation stayed the same. He'd call and vent about work or some petty drama. I'd send him memes, pictures of our dog, and links to old songs we used to sing along to. The space between us grew, sure, but I didn't think it would ever really break us apart. Not us. Not after everything. Then he moved across the country for a new job. We didn't talk as much, but I kept checking in. I sent birthday cards, care packages with snacks we loved as kids, and small gifts that meant something only to the two of us. Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he didn't. I chalked it up to stress. Life. Busyness. I never let it get to me because I thought our bond could outlast anything. I always believed that the silences were temporary, that if I just waited long enough, he'd circle back. He always had before. Until that dinner. We were sitting around a table, me, a few cousins, catching up. Nothing special. Just comfort food and casual stories. And then Ellie, always the unfiltered one, dropped it like a casual headline. Nathan got married. I froze. I blinked. Thought she was kidding. But she wasn't. Married. Not engaged. Not planning to. Already married. The words landed like a book slamming shut on a chapter one didn't know was ending. There was this weird pause, and Ellie, noticing my silence, just shrugged and said, honestly, he probably just forgot about you. The world didn't stop. No dramatic gasp. Just a fork clinking against a plate and my brain trying to process what I just heard. That phrase. Forgot about you. It hit deeper than I want to admit. Because the worst part? It sounded like something that might be true. The days after that dinner were blurry. I functioned. I went to work. I smiled when people spoke to me. But inside, it felt like someone had turned down the volume on everything. I walked through routines like I was on autopilot. I couldn't shake the weight of that news. Late one night, I did what I had been avoiding. I searched. His name. His wife's name. Wedding posts. And there they were, photos scattered across feeds, tagged and filtered. Nathan barefoot on a beach, holding hands with a woman I'd never met. Our parents were in the background, beaming like everything was exactly how it should be. Cousins toasting. Friends laughing. People are sharing heartfelt captions. Except me. I wasn't there. Not even mentioned. I scrolled through every picture, every comment, like I was studying strangers. It felt surreal. These were people I knew. Family. And yet, this moment, the biggest moment in Nathan's life, had unfolded without me. It felt like I'd been erased from a page I didn't know was being rewritten. I remembered a wedding we went to as kids. Sitting at a folding table, stealing extra slices of cake. We promised we'd be at each other's weddings no matter what. That we'd dance like idiots and give speeches that made people cry from laughing. That promise felt like a certainty back then. Now, it felt like a joke I didn't know I was part of. And then a friend, trying to be helpful, sent me a clip from the ceremony. Nathan, smiling, saying something about how people drift. Everyone laughed. He laughed. Like this gap between us was natural. Like it wasn't a choice. But I hadn't drifted. I'd held on. Sent messages. Shared memories. Left breadcrumbs back to me. But he never followed them. And in that moment, watching that clip, I understood something I hadn't wanted to believe. I had been written out of his story. Grief doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it slips into your life quietly. It lingers in your favorite coffee shop. In a song that used to mean something. In the silence where a phone call used to be. I stopped checking his updates. Stopped wondering what he was doing. Not out of resentment, but because the wondering hurt more than the knowing. I packed away the memories in a mental drawer. Not erased. Just stored. Because looking at them too often felt like picking a scab that never quite healed. Instead, I leaned into my own life. I reconnected with old friends who asked about me without expecting anything in return. I started biking again. Volunteered at a local bookstore. Took long walks without headphones, just letting my thoughts find new pathways. Slowly, the ache turned into something else, not numbness, but clarity. I didn't talk about Nathan much. Not because I didn't care, but because the story wasn't finished. Or maybe it was. And I was still learning how to tell it without flinching. My healing came in pieces, one quiet realization at a time. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I just wanted peace. And over time, that started to feel possible. It didn't come with a big revelation, just small moments of stillness. Mornings when I felt okay. Evenings when I laughed without guilt. It was slow, but it was real. Update. It's been almost 8 months since I found out about Nathan's wedding. Since then, a lot has shifted quietly, steadily. I still haven't heard from him. Not a word. But I've also stopped expecting it. I no longer scroll his page hoping for an update. I no longer craft texts I never send. That version of me, the one who waited, isn't here anymore. A cousin mentioned that Nathan and his wife are expecting their first child. I heard it while grabbing coffee, a casual update tucked between small talk. And surprisingly, I didn't freeze. I didn't feel that wave of sadness. I just nodded, congratulated them through a smile that felt real even if it didn't reach him. More importantly, I've started focusing on the parts of life that feel within reach. I've made new friends. Real ones. I've started sketching again, something I haven't done seriously in years. I've written pieces about grief and distance and chosen family. Some of them have found their way online. One even led to an old friend reaching out, saying it made them feel seen. That meant more than I can say. These days, my mornings are quieter. I journal. I make tea. I walk outside even when it's cold. I sit with the ache when it shows up, but I don't let it control the rest of my day. Nathan's absence still lives in my life, but it no longer defines the way I move through it. Not every story gets a reunion. Not every wound ends with an apology. But that doesn't mean healing doesn't happen. It does, just slower, quieter, and often alone. It's strange how a person can disappear from your life without any goodbye, and yet their absence keeps echoing through the smallest moments. That's what Nathan became, an echo. Not a person, not a presence, just a lingering impression in places he used to be. Lately, I've started to appreciate the small rituals that make my world feel whole again. I spend quiet mornings writing before the sun fully rises, letting my thoughts land where they may. I make lists of things I want to try, new foods, new books, new places. I light candles in the evening and cook meals that smell like comfort. These are the parts of my day that belong only to me. They aren't shared or compared. They just exist. And I've come to realize that I exist, too. Fully. Not as someone's sibling or afterthought. Just me. There was a time when I wanted answers, when I longed for an apology, an explanation, a confession that something had gone wrong and he knew it. But I'm no longer waiting at that closed door. I'm building a life on the other side of it. I've been spending time with people who listen. People who remember the little things. Friends who show up not out of obligation but out of joy. We've started hosting small dinners, and laughter fills the room in a way that doesn't carry shadows. It's different. It's lighter. And it's mine. Sometimes I still think of Nathan. When I pass a certain coffee shop. When an old song comes on the radio. When I see someone walking who looks a little too much like him. But those moments pass. They don't drag me down anymore. They don't undo the peace I've started to create. This isn't a resolution. It's not the end of a story wrapped in closure. It's just another chapter. One where I don't wait to be remembered. One where I choose myself. And honestly, that might be the beginning I needed all along. Time doesn't always heal in a straight line. Some days I feel entirely fine, like I've moved on and built a life so separate from Nathan's that his absence feels like a closed door in a house I no longer live in. Other days it sneaks back. A memory, a photo, a scent, and suddenly I'm back in a moment I thought I had already buried. But those moments don't control me anymore. I've learned how to let them pass like the weather. There was a time when I thought silence was the cruelest form of rejection. When I assumed that being ignored meant I wasn't worth remembering. But now, I've begun to understand something deeper. Sometimes people distance themselves not because of something we did, but because they don't have the capacity or the courage to carry us into the next chapter of their lives. Nathan made a decision, whether intentional or not. He closed a door. And I've stopped standing on the other side, knocking. Instead, I've been saying yes to the kind of life I used to think only other people were allowed to live. I've taken weekend trips with friends who feel like chosen family. I've said yes to spontaneous invites, to uncomfortable opportunities, to moments that feel messy but real. I even started teaching a local art class, nothing big, just something at a community center on Saturdays. The first day, I was terrified no one would show up. But they did. And for an hour each week, I get to see strangers tap into something creative and pure. It's grounding in a way I never expected. The connections I've made over the last year feel quieter, but stronger. These people don't know the whole history of me and Nathan. They just know who I am now. They know I like my coffee a little too sweet and that I'll always choose the window seat. They know me without the shadows. And as that version of me has grown, I've come to realize something else. I don't need to reclaim my place in Nathan's life. I've created something better in mine. There's still sadness. There's still wondering. But it doesn't anchor me anymore. And that kind of freedom earned through heartbreak and reflection feels like the most honest form of peace I've ever known. Update. It's been a full year since I found out about Nathan's wedding. A full year since that dinner with Ellie. Since that shrug. Since those words that flipped my entire world into a quiet kind of unraveling. I didn't think I'd make it to this point without bitterness in my chest. But here I am, still standing, still building, still living in a version of life that no longer circles around absence. The strangest thing is how normal things feel now. I go to the grocery store. I water my plants. I laugh at the same stupid comedy shows I always have. But it's not numbness. It's something steadier. Something rooted. Every so often someone asks me about my brother. Not often, but it happens. I just say we don't talk much anymore. Most people nod, say nothing, and move on. Some ask more. I offer little. Not because I'm holding secrets, but because I've already said everything I needed to, just not to him. Recently, I saw a picture online. Someone had reposted a photo of Nathan and his wife holding their newborn. The caption was short. It was one of those polished, smiling portraits with perfectly folded blankets and soft pastel lighting. I looked at it for a long time. Not because I felt excluded, but because it didn't sting the way it once might have. I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I just sat with it, then scrolled past it. That's when I realized how far I'd come. I used to think healing would look like confrontation, or closure, or reconciliation. But now I understand that sometimes healing is walking away without needing to turn around. It's making a home inside your own story without begging to be written into someone else's. I'm still making art. Still showing up for my friends. Still surprising myself by how full life feels even with a few pages missing. I've stopped waiting for a moment that may never come. And somehow that's made everything feel lighter. If Nathan ever reaches out, maybe years from now, I don't know what I'd say. I don't hold a script anymore. I don't wait for that scene to start. I'm already living in the next chapter. So this is where it ends, not with a door slamming, not with a dramatic reunion, but with a soft, quiet truth. I've made peace with the silence. And I'm no longer trying to fill it. Hope you enjoyed this story as much as I do. Help this small channel grow by hitting that like button, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. Every bit of support means the world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.